Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is Carlos Miller from Photography is Not a Crime, and we're here on the set of the new PINAC TV internet show, which we hope is going to be much more to come over the next few months. And as you can see, we're in Miami, but this is actually a backdrop because we're actually sitting out there. We would be getting harassed by cops right now. So we're doing this in a studio in Miami, and we got Joel Chandler and Jeff Gray, who's also known as Honor Your Oath. And basically, we're going to tell you some very exciting news. I've invited them to become partners in Photography is Not a Crime. They've accepted. We're going to incorporate Photography is Not a Crime. We're going to expand the site, continue doing what I've been doing for 6 years, and now we're going to add a lot more educational videos, a lot more, a lot more content. And anyone familiar with these guys know what they can do. So, just to give you my background, when I first started this blog, I didn't think it was going to last this long. I basically started the blog. It was going to last for a few months because I wanted to get past my first trial. And I thought once I get past that trial, I'll just close the blog down and move on to something that actually makes money. And I was convicted of resisting arrest. I was acquitted of all the other charges. I appealed that pro se with no lawyer. I was victorious in getting that conviction reversed. I was arrested a second time, then a third time. And so I couldn't really let go of the blog. And meanwhile, I met a lot of interesting people along the way. And these guys are awesome. I met Joel in 2010 or 2009 when he came down for a Metrorail protest. I've had this long ongoing issue with the Metrorail, and we'll be getting into that. But first of all, I just want to you tell us a little bit about yourself. And we're going to show a video. One of my favorite videos that he's done was when he came down to Miami last time, and he goes in there asking for public records. And he's really a nice guy, but he came across a little bit, I want to say that not a nice guy, but not like he wasn't going to put up with anything. And you should see the looks on these guys' faces. So let's check out this video.
Yeah, I wanted to make a public record request. I want to inspect and photograph the rental slip agreement for slip number 28.
Good morning. My name is Steve, and I'm the manager of the marina.
Great.
Public records requests need to go through our Department of Communications.
You all have the record here, right?
I do.
I don't need to go to anybody else.
Okay. Well, I've been told and instructed otherwise, so I'm not able to provide you with that record at this time.
Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you call the city clerk and let her know that Joel Chandler's here, and I think she'll disabuse you of that information.
Okay.
I'll wait.
I'm not going to provide you with that information.
Why don't you call the city clerk?
Because I'm right in the middle of something else. Filming or recording me right now?
Absolutely, because I have a statutory right to photograph public records, and I'm here to make a public record request.
There's my card.
Look, do yourself a favor, do the city a favor, and call the city clerk. Tell her Joel Chandler's here.
Mr. Chandler, you don't have my permission or authorization to film or record this conversation.
I don't need it.
Okay.
I don't need it.
I'd like to ask you to leave, please.
So that was awesome. Anyways, tell us about that.
I'm a full-time civil rights advocate, and the principal area of interest for me is trying to empower other people to access public records, which in the state of Florida is a constitutionally protected civil right. Virtually all states, probably all the states in the United States, have some form of a public records law. We have particularly generous laws here. But I very regularly go out and visit public agencies and make public records requests, which they're required by law to allow access to any person who makes a public records request. And I just happened to be staying at a hotel that was in Coconut Grove, and I was staying in a hotel right across the street from the Dinner Key Marina. And I one morning got up and walked across the street and went in to make a public records request, and I just randomly selected a boat slip. Walked into the marina office and made the public records request, and they didn't respond very positively. And before it was over with, I was detained by two plainclothes police officers. They tried to remove me from City Hall, which is just next door. Fortunately for the city of Miami, their city clerk was a very nice man and intervened and knew who I was familiar with my work. So that's very typical. What you saw in the video, it happens all the time.
Speaking of your work, how many agencies have you sued over the years?
I've lost count. I can only estimate. I think I've probably filed and won about 200 public records lawsuits, and I've won all but 4 at the trial level, and I've appealed those losses. So my win-loss ratio is something in the 98, 99% range.
So part of what we want to do with the new Photography Not a Crime is do a lot more educational videos and stories about how you guys can do your own public records request, not only in Florida but in other states. And we hope to encourage you guys, if you live in, say, Missouri or California, to learn about your own public record laws and do videos, and we'll put them up on the internet, because we want to, we're in an era now where the media is not really doing a good job. The politicians, they never really do a good job. Cops, we know they don't really care. They're not going to do a good job. They're not really looking out for the citizens. So it's up for the citizens to be their own media. That's why Joel's wearing that shirt. Be the Media is one of the shirts I've been selling. I'm going to introduce it actually today. And Jeff Gray, honor your oath. This guy, this guy, just to give you some background, this guy spent 20 years as a truck driver for Winn-Dixie, has never spent a day in journalism school. And this guy, in the last few months, I've seen him become a much better journalist than a lot of people I used to work with in newspapers. And this guy's actually, he's a great learner. Now he's learning from Joel how to do public records. Well, we're all learning from Joel. And just give us your story.
All right. And first of all, first time I met you, coming down here just the other day, we've been talking for years, but it's the first time we met. You treated us to some good food, and I found out everything in Miami is 20 minutes from everything. So,
but 20 minutes in theory, right? And you get in traffic, and it's like whatever, right?
Yeah.
But let's show a video, because you had a great video the other day from with the Daytona one, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just a typical video where you went in and asked for a public records request. They actually gave it to you. Then you walked out and you're recording some cop cars, and they give you a whole bunch of hassle about that.
Basically, what I wanted to do was just, how the news will do the shots where the cop car comes out and they'll show the cop car and you pan back to the police station. That's all.
B-roll. Yeah.
B-roll. Yeah. B-roll.
Let's check that out.
Okay.
Do you have any ID on you, sir?
Do you have any identification?
That doesn't.
By the way, you don't have my permission to tape me, but
that's fine. I'm taping you. Okay.
That's fine.
I don't need your permission. Do I need your permission?
Yes, you do.
Really? Why?
Yeah, because Florida is a second party state. You need two parties to consent to a videotape.
Okay. Do you have any identification to prove who you are?
Can you hand that to him so he can see it too, please?
Does that have your identification?
It doesn't say who you are. It says you invoke your rights.
Can I have that? Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. Are you familiar with Terry versus Ohio, 1968?
Am I being detained?
Yes, you are.
For what reason?
We are now conducting an investigation to find out what you're doing here.
I'm free to go. I'd just like to be free to go. I'm getting tired of this. You guys have a nice day. If I'm not being detained, I'll see you later. But I'd like your name and badge number first.
Officer Agata.
What's your name?
Part-time officer. 14743.
Okay.
Officer Einiger, you're not free to film me.
Yeah, you really
Can I have your name and badge number, sir?
Your permission. You don't have my permission to film me, sir.
Can I have your name and badge number, sir?
You give me your name first, and I'll give you mine.
I'd like to remain silent. May I have your name and badge number?
Like to remain silent.
You are obligated by policy to tell me.
Your name and ID number, and we're going to ask you to just carry on, move on about your business, sir.
All right. Well, so then what ended up happening? You walked away, and then what?
Well, that's the type of thing. I catch a lot of flack about talking too much, but I feel pretty confident in my ability to just kind of give the cops the rope and let them hang themselves. And I was figuratively, and. So, I just want to show people that, you can assert your rights, but you can do it politely. You just remain calm, remain polite, and assert your rights. And, and let them just kind of make fools of themselves.
That's the one thing, that always impressed me about you is your ability to remain very calm and professional, polite, where someone like me, I kind of get a little passionate sometimes, and things might get heated. Of course, down here, everybody's on edge, but it's like he's a great example of how to record cops, how to handle yourself with cops, because, I've put a lot of videos out there, other people, and some people end up cursing cops out, which is legal, but, sometimes it doesn't come across very professional to other people. And, basically the idea is to allow cops to make fools of themselves. And remember, we're recording ourselves too as we're recording them. So let's just learn from Jeff.
Right. Jeff is the consummate gentleman.
Yeah.
And I think you've done a remarkable job of showing an example to other citizen activists and journalists that it's possible to very definitively and in a positive way to assert your rights firmly without dropping yourself down to the level of people who are overreacting.
Right.
And I think that's really important.
You basically, a lot of people, you get this a lot. You get this. You're tricking them into stuff. You're trapping them into doing stuff. Gotcha stuff. But you're not. You have the camera. The camera simply documents. If they're going to be foolish, it simply documents that. And
you're very open with a camera, so
yeah, you might help them along a little bit.
Yeah.
But give them a little bit of rope, like I was talking about earlier. But you just basically you just kind of be cool behind the camera, know how to assert your rights, the importance of asserting your rights, and the importance of documenting the interaction. I don't care if it's the dog catcher, the mayor, or a police officer. You have to document it with video and audio, and you have to know your rights.
Now we're going to be doing this full time. I think I mentioned you've quit your job, right? And Joel and I have been doing this full time, and it just kind of happened by accident. My thing was my arrest. Joel, how did you get into this?
Originally, I just on a lark decided to go make a public records request. I'd never made one before. This was back in 2007, and I went to the county seat. I live in Polk County in Central Florida, and went to several different agencies, made a public records request. All the agencies complied except for the school board. Long story short, I went back a year later and made the most invasive public records request I could think of. They refused to produce the records, and I ended up suing them. And my legal fees were at one time about $50,000. In Florida, we're entitled to recover your attorney's fees, your legal expenses, when you prevail. And so I just kind of doubled down. I decided to keep going. It was frankly, asserting my rights and getting involved in activism was really intoxicating, because I began to realize, I call it the little old lady test. If I go into a public agency and I make a public records request and I get denied access, I'll get the records because I'm willing to assert my rights and I'm very willing to litigate. But the average person, the little old lady that walks in and asks for her water bill and is told that she has to make a request in writing or give her personal information before she can get the records, or explain why she wants it, or she's going to have to wait an inordinate amount of time to get the records.
Or go down the road.
Yeah, people like that don't stand a chance.
No.
And, so what I'm not doing this, a lot of times, obviously we're involved with journalism ourselves, citizen journalism.
And we'll be doing a lot more of that.
Yeah,
we're not just going to be making public records requests. We're going to be doing actual stories, investigative stories, and that's part of the reason I wanted to bring them in, because he has so much great content, and I'm just writing a lot of stories about cops arresting people, but now we're going to take this to another level. And we had a great interview last night with a couple of individuals that have a great story. I don't want to give too many details away because it's good. This is good, and he sat there. He sat there last night while we were interviewing these people, and he took all these notes. He asked these really great questions. I've been a journalist since I was 16, writing for high school newspapers. I went to college for journalism. I wrote for newspapers. I've written for websites. I used to be a member of IRE, investigative reporters and editors. I really took journalism very serious, and I worked with a lot of professional journalists. And these two guys are very talented, and they have no background in journalism. And he asked the right questions. I feel very comfortable. It takes a load off my back, because now I can just, relax a little bit and do other things, and comfortable knowing they're going to produce stuff, and we're all going to work together. And we are, I hope I mentioned this earlier, we are incorporating, so this is official, and we're doing this all legally, and it is a really serious project. And earlier today, I do want to bring this up too. Earlier today, we did something that was a little unique. We went to a private building, where we're trying to go into a private company. We never got there, to ask for public records, because they're contracted by the government. And of course, the cops got called on us, and we'll show you some of that video in a bit. But just give us some background on that first.
Yeah, in Florida, and this would be true in other states as well, a private company who is acting on behalf, standing in the shoes of the state of Florida, they're subject to the Public Records Act just like a government agency would be. So for the purposes of the public records law, the private company that we try to go to today is an agency. Mm-hmm. They're a Medicaid provider, and they have a very large contract. The contract explicitly states that anyone who wants to gain access to records created or received in connection with the contract must be given access to it. The vendor's failure to do so can result in the immediate and unilateral cancellation of the contract, which is an $80 million contract in this case. So we just showed up to make a public records request. We actually went to where the contract says the records have to be maintained and made available to anybody that walks in off the street. And of course, when we went in, I announced very clearly, very politely, that we were there to make a public records request, to inspect and photograph, and you have a right in Florida, a statutory right to photograph the records. And it went downhill from there. We were very polite. The building manager came, the security showed up. They asked us to stop videotaping, and I thought very politely offered for us to step outside since they didn't want us to videotape inside, while they contacted the vendor, who bizarrely, they're on the 7th floor, but when you go to the directory, they're not even listed.
What is the name of this vendor?
Medica, I think, is the name of it.
And they produce what? What do they do?
They manage Medicaid services for poor people in the state of Florida.
And there's a lot of fraud with that as well, right?
Yeah, and I'm not accusing this company of fraud. The problem is we want to get the records. We haven't been able to see the records. They clearly are not wanting the public to be able to access public records, and they're called public records for a reason. They belong to the public. They don't belong to that company. Right. But yeah, there's been a lot of Medicaid fraud. In fact, a very large Medicaid provider in Tampa Bay, which has a $1.5 billion contract. 3 of their top executives just recently went to prison for Medicaid fraud. They still have the contract.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about public records access and journalism, what people need to understand is that really, and you know this having been a professional journalist, public records access is like part and parcel. It's bread and butter. It's the kind of things that reporters use every single day in order to get information for the stories that they write. So if our readers and the public are going to become citizen journalists, they need to be able to understand how to use those tools so that they can get access to information, so that they can actually write meaningful stories that they can document. If you look at most of the public records litigation in the history of the state of Florida, almost all of it was done by newspapers.
Yeah.
But as newspapers have begun to struggle financially, they simply aren't able to do that kind of litigation. So it really falls upon the shoulders of individuals and people who are interested in citizen journalism to step up to the plate and assert their rights. It's the same reason that we're advocating promoting citizen journalism, is because the mainstream media, for a whole host of reasons, is really not as robust as it used to be.
Yeah.
And we want to empower people to be able to go out and do great journalism, photography, get records that they need so that they can tell stories that are important.
Yeah. So what were you thinking? This is your first time down in Miami. You've always had you know, you have your own style up there, but here, what was your impression of the cops down here?
Well, the Coral Gables, is that who they were? The
Coral Gables, yes.
Coral Gables Police. They were very reluctant to really engage us. I think they kind of could tell what was going on. It wasn't too bad, but I know from seeing the videos that you guys have been involved in, it's a lot more aggressive down here, it seems.
Yeah.
And than it is up in North Florida, where I'm from.
Yeah.
So.
Now, Coral Gables PD, I mean, I'm born and raised here. Coral Gables PD has always been a lot more civil than, say, Miami PD or Miami-Dade or Miami Beach or some of the other agencies down here. Coral Gables, I've had really good experiences with them, so I don't want to knock them. And they came and they were kind of like, they didn't really want to get involved. In fact, they were inside the building talking to the property manager for a while, and we're hanging outside. And finally said, okay, we're going to walk, we're going to leave. So we started walking away, and then they called us back. So we walked back, and they trespassed us. So they said, if you come back here, we're gonna arrest you for trespassing. They asked for our names, or they asked for identifications. We didn't give them that. But I wasn't sure what to do then, but I did give my name and my date of birth. And if I go back, I guess I'll get arrested. But that's kind of like, now that kind of it makes this more interesting, because now they're threatening us with arrest for trying to go and get public records, which we own. It might be a private building, but the public records that we own as citizens are in this public building, which we can't access.
By law, they're in that building. There is a legal contract with the Agency for Healthcare Administration, a state agency, that requires that the public records be stored in that building. And there is a constitutional and statutory right for every person, not just citizens of Florida, anybody, to walk in there during regular business hours and gain access to public records. And we were told, and the police were very, very clear about this. I mean, literally, it was, if you cross this crack in the sidewalk, you will be arrested. Yeah. Even for the purpose of exercising a constitutionally protected civil right.
Yeah. And do you know if there's any case law where people have challenged that these public records are enclosed in a private property and they're not allowing the public to access these public records?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know that I have no doubt how the courts are going to rule on this. Yeah. And I say that in the affirmative because I will file a lawsuit. I mean, within the next 2 weeks I'll file a lawsuit against this vendor. Frankly, I hope it goes the distance. I'd love to go to the appellate courts on this. I'd love to create some new law. I think this is an issue because of the privatization. There's a tremendous amount of privatization, both of prisons, healthcare, et cetera. More and more public records are in the hands of private contractors, and essentially what these folks are trying to do is to sequester themselves behind this make-believe security. We didn't go through a metal detector. It was just, give me your identification, which is nonsense. That is not security. If it was a metal detector, we would happily have gone through it. But they try to sequester themselves behind this make-believe security and keep people from getting in because they demanded identification. But the problem is, under Florida law, you cannot make identifying yourself or presenting identification a condition of access. So this is going to get litigated. This is going to be fun.
Now, what would have happened? This is where I was a little confused today, because I know, you know, the old routine is, okay, can I have your identification? Am I being detained? No, you're not being detained. Well, I'm going to walk away. But here it was like, we're being trespassed. We're given a trespass warning. So you're not being detained, but you are getting a trespass warning. So that was kind of new territory for me. So I didn't provide my identification, but I did provide my name because, you know, I don't want to go to jail over something maybe I'm right in. So I did give him my name, and I'm not sure what is the facts on that.
You know, we're not attorneys. We should certainly make that very clear. We are not attorneys. We're just three guys talking, having a conversation. I speak for myself on this. You know, I asked if I was being detained, and the answer was no. I'm certainly under no obligation to produce identification if I'm not being detained. I said, well, can I just give you my name? And the police officers, we were talking to different police officers, there were seven or eight police officers showed up, which seemed a little excessive, although they were generally polite. You know, frankly, from a, and I'll be very candid about this, from a litigation perspective, getting trespassed just made the case that much more interesting, and I think that much more compelling to the courts, or will be compelling to the courts. I find it ironic, and we were talking about this earlier today, because you had the same experience with 50 state security at the Metro Rail when HDTV showed up with a boom microphone and a big TV and a reporter. And you would think that these people, these private contractors acting on behalf of the state, would understand that something's up.
Well, he even admitted it.
Well, he clearly did.
Something. I know what you guys are doing. And
you saw the hat. Photographer's not a crime.
Right.
But the idea that they are, so my point in bringing that up is, if they are that aggressive and that arrogant and that willing to violate the law and people's rights when they know it's being documented, imagine what it's like for some little old lady standing on the subway platform or the Metro Rail platform, or for some little old lady walking into a Medicaid vendor making a public record. They don't stand a chance.
Well, this is the whole point. This is the whole point of my blog is to keep government transparent, keep police transparent, is to put the camera, you know, and shine the camera at them, because we've seen what they do on camera. A lot of times they know they're on camera and they don't care. So imagine what they do when they're off camera. I mean, that's scary. That's a scary feeling, because I know I've been beaten up, I've been strangled, I've really been, you know, physically assaulted by cops and security guards, and I've seen worse. And knowing they're on camera. So it's, you know, Kelly Thomas is a really bad example of what they can do when they think they can get away with anything. But, you know, to wrap things up here, what do you, like, I mean, can you guys give us a couple of statements on what do you plan to do to contribute to Photographers Not a Crime, or how do you envision this, or what does this mean to you?
Well, I'm very excited about doing it, and thank you for the invitation, and it was an easy invitation to accept. I anticipate that there will be two primary areas that I really focus on. One is education. I want to provide education to our readers who are interested in becoming more active as citizen journalists, and helping them, coaching them, empowering them to assert their rights as far as getting access to records. Because it is, I've told people this, you have experienced this, I warned you at the beginning, it's very addictive. Once you start realizing just what you can get at, that there's just no end to it. I mean, one records request leads to another one. So I want to educate people and help them to do that. Secondly, because I root around and make, I guess, probably more public records requests than any other individual in the state of Florida, I come across a lot of trash. I mean, a lot of corruption, a lot of waste, a lot of fraud, things that are just frankly compelling stories. And in the past, I have sourced for a lot of reporters. I get calls from reporters 2-3 times a week, and I give them, hey, what have you found recently? Give me some. And actually, there've been stories of reporters done where they've won Emmys. But now through PINAC, I'll now have a national audience to take those stories that I was sourcing for other reporters, and we're going to report them.
Did I already mention the whole, when you helped me out, because I know we did a previous segment that got kind of disconnected, but during my case, during my third arrest, Joel made some requests. Joel and his brother Robert, they did some requests, and Nancy Perez, Major Nancy Perez, the public information officer who arrested me at the Occupy Miami eviction, she told my attorney in a deposition that she had no idea who it was. She goes, no, I thought he was an activist. I had all these cameras. I thought he was an activist, and I didn't know he was a journalist. And it turns out, through public records, basically, let me get Carlos Miller's names and all the emails that Nancy Perez has received. Well, they knew who I was. She knew who I was. I mean, she received an email earlier that morning from my Facebook page, my picture, and saying that I had claimed that Carlos Miller, a Miami multimedia journalist, is going to be at the Occupy Miami. It's a situational awareness. I mean, they're giving all these cops a heads up that I'm going to be there, and they didn't do that to any of the other journalists. So
I think that public records request, you also found out Homeland Security was monitoring.
Right, that's how we found out that they were monitoring their Homeland Security division, which is a fusion center with the feds, were monitoring my page, which is, my page is public, so that's cool, but that's what we're spending our money on, is them monitoring my page on Facebook and giving these other cops a heads up that I'm going to be Occupy Miami. And that's okay too, but then when she turns around and lies under oath to my attorney, says, I didn't know who he was, and then we proved that she lied, that was through public records. That's through.
Yeah, but you're able to demonstrate that a police major perjured herself, and public records show that clearly what she just said, what the words came out of her mouth, are not true, and she knows it.
Now, we got a few minutes left, and tell us, what do you think? What do you envision for the future, or what are your ideas on this?
Well, one of the things I really love about Photography is Not a Crime throughout your, since you started it, is how we help people. When there's a story about a person being illegally arrested, there's a call flood. You put the story up there, so it's not just swept under the rug. The readers follow it. They call. They demand charges be dropped. They put the pressure on the police agency. And plus, going through the public records now, I want to, just the power that the citizens have through their right to know and through the public records law, and in the state of Florida specifically, but across the country too. You have so much power doing that, and it's just the education of helping people to learn, to go in and expose that, and expose anything that's been lied about and corruption.
For me, journalism has always been giving a voice to the people who do not have a voice, even when I worked at newspapers and all that. And that, along the way, that kind of really, changed in the industry, where journalism became very institutionalized, where it got all the conglomerates took place, and all, we had now I think we have 5 companies that own all the media companies in the country. And so you really don't have a lot of diverse selection of voices there. So, and media, journalism, the mainstream media is no longer, or the corporate media as I call it, is no longer the voice of the people. And that's what we are. The new media is the voice of the people, and that's what we're going to try to do. So we do need your help in, and contributing your videos, doing your own education, and helping us along the way. We're going to need some help along the way financially, and we'll be talking about that, and I'll be writing about that. But mainly just going out there and learning and doing your own reporting. We will be posting it on our site, and that furthers educating people. So that's all I really have to say. I'm very excited about this, and there's going to be a lot more happening in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Great.
Cool.